Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's video, my psycho neighbor is jealous of my land, and while I am gone, she built a moat around my property to destroy and flood my house. I ended up suing her. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the video. I know from this title it sounds like something medieval. I promise that I don't have a castle or some princess locked away in a tower though. Honestly, having that would all be less dramatic than having my neighbor exist in my life. If it was the olden days, she would have probably been dead because people back then did not take crap from anyone. Karen hates me and I won't sit here and pretend like I'm the perfect person or neighbor. But this woman is a complete menace and deserves no compassion for me. I don't want to get into a totally different story, but I do want to give an example of how unhinged this woman really is. One time, she called the cops on my kids for playing while they were on our property and doing nothing wrong. Just called the police because she felt like it and assumed they would make my kids stay indoors and not play outside. Another time, she called animal control on my dog for not being on a leash and claimed it was illegal, wanting my dog to be put down because of it. We have an invisible fence for the dog and it's fully legal for him to be off leash on our private property. One thing I found out over all of this was that Karen wanted some of my land because hers was much smaller over the years. These rural areas have been in families for generations, and while some like mine stayed large, some like hers got sold and shrunk down in size. She was hoping that she could upset and harass me enough to move and put my land up for sale where she could buy some. She did not understand that the more she tried to push me, the more I was gonna root myself on the spot. I could have been offered a free mansion and I would have said no at this point just to spite her back. Every year, I go with my family on a camping trip for a few days. No electronics, no outside world, no work. Just pure family time where we can catch up and stay connected to each other. It's a tradition I got from my father, and my kids really look forward to it every year. We went for 4 days, and when I came back, I saw that my house had what I can only describe as a moat surrounding it. The land around the entire home was dug up, and getting into the house required me to get a plank of wood for us to cross over it. Now, this moat was huge and could not be solved with a shovel and some dirt. It was machine dug clearly, and I knew exactly who to blame for it. I went to speak to Karen and did not take a minute to calm down before it got to her. Me, what the hell did you do to my land? Karen, wow, so much anger, makes me wonder how you treat your kids. Me, cut the crap, I know you did it. Karen, did what? She was trying to act like she didn't know what I was talking about, but her face told a different story. One where she was gleeful at my anger and knew exactly where I was going with this. Me, you dug up my yard. Karen, oh, you mean that? Well, you weren't here, so good luck trying to prove I did anything. It was probably some wild animal. If you don't like it, maybe you should consider moving somewhere a little less rural, sweetie. Her calling me sweetie with that condescending voice made me want to both throw up and punch this woman for the first time in my life. I did neither and managed to walk away and figure out another way to get back at her. I knew if I dug deep enough, pun intended, I could find that she was behind this. There were only so many companies in the area that could have done this, and I had a record of who hired and paid them. During the long process of doing that, we had some pretty bad rain, and as you can imagine, the moat caught the water holding it. With nowhere for it to go, it started to seep into the ground towards my house. The moat essentially morphed into a giant sinkhole, with my house being right at the epicenter of it. I sustained major damage to both my house and the land around it. The foundation basically sunk into the ground and our lower level flooded. We had to leave the house and go stay with my wife's family until we could figure out how we were gonna fix this or even pay for it all. I did not give up looking for the company that dug the hole and at this point enlisted the help of a lawyer. I explained everything and he told me that Karen would be at fault for the flooding and the damage. Hearing that made me double my efforts and I finally found the company that she hired to dig up my yard. Trust me, I had some very choice words with them and my lawyer was gonna file a document to make them come talk in court about the entire thing. Karen had no idea that I found out and went into court thinking I had no proof. Her lawyer gave an entire thing about me just being an angry neighbor and wanting to blame her for everything despite having no proof. That it was clear I needed anger management and probably dug the moat and destroyed my house for the sole purpose to try and hurting her. There was no video evidence of her doing anything wrong and just on me saying so I couldn't force her to pay anything. When we talked about having the testimony of the company saying that she hired them to dig the moat, she was scared. Documents she gave to them claiming the land was hers and that she wanted the work done. Documents showing that she paid by check and the record of it was clear as day. She had no ability to explain why she had done it and instead started crying and making things up to try and weasel her way out of it. She was calling the entire thing just a neighborly joke and did not think that the land could get hurt from the moat. Trying to play it off as if we were friends and would play pranks on each other all the time. And well, ripe stars, that has to be the crappiest prank I've ever heard of. Either way, none of that mattered because she was found liable for the damage and forced to pay me to repair my land. Along with any property damage the insurance was not gonna cover for the things that got destroyed in the flood. She owed us so much money that she had to even sell more of her land in order to pay us off, shrinking it down even further. As for the falsification of documents, she was being charged and now she has a criminal police record. I warned her that if she messes with me or my family again, I will make sure that she ends up in jail and losing the rest of her property. And yeah, ripe stars, honestly, if I would have been OP, I would have taken this much further. I mean, Karen losing a lot of money is good, but I would have wanted her in jail or even in prison for messing with my property in such a way. Anyway, if you liked the story, please don't forget to like the video and maybe even post a comment to help me with the damn algorithm. The next one is a great revenge story. Baked goods. Everyone loves baked goods. My sister, she probably loves them more than anyone. So on the day she was down and depressed after breaking up with her boyfriend, my brother and I swore to bring her a cheer with a delicious chocolate cake. We venture out the front door and hop into his Jeep and set on down the road to the local grocery store. We arrive and as we are looking to park, this woman, who we will call the Blob, cuts us off and steals the parking spot we were waiting for. We shrugged it off as we were pretty relaxed fellows and parked in another spot. We make our way into the grocery store, head directly to the baked goods counter and wait in line to be served. The Blob pulls up behind us, chattering away obnoxiously on her cell phone and completely oblivious to what was around her. Our turn to be served comes up and we select the last remaining chocolate cake and ask the baker to put a message on our cake. She said it would take about 10 minutes as there was a line and we told her we would be back to pick up our order. As we were walking away, the Blob asks for a chocolate cake and is told there's none left and that we got the last one. She begins freaking out in a very entitled tone and demands that she received said cake since we cut her off in the bakery line. However, the baker assures her we were here first and she would have to pick a different cake. At this point, we could no longer hear what was happening, but we didn't care as the Blob stole our parking spot and got her just desserts as we took the last chocolate cake. However, our dealing with the Blob were far from over. We headed to the frozen aisle to grab some pizza pockets, fries, chicken fingers and other delectable snack foods as we were pretty starved. We headed back to the bakery counter only to find a different person behind the counter. We ask her for our cake and are told our sister picked it up. She then points down the bread aisle to the Blob with our cake in her damn cart. Now, most people would walk away and let this Karen eat her cake, but we were not backing down. We followed her for some time through the grocery store and we decided to wait for an opportune moment and steal our cake back. The second she turned to grab something from the dairy fridge, we galloped over, grabbed the cake and ran headlong to the checkout. Looking back, we saw that she was distracted on her phone again and did not notice the cake was missing. We paid for our groceries and headed out to the truck. As we were leaving, we realized that maybe we could get a little extra revenge on her. So we wrote up a note indicating how delicious the cake was and that she would thank us for saving her the calories. We tucked this under the wiper of her car and drove off just as she was walking out. Her face was red and puffed with air. We could tell that she was angry as hell that we got our cake back. And by the way guys, who the hell steals cakes at a grocery store? Also, I was kind of perplexed when OP said that most people would just let Karen walk away as if nothing happened. If someone steals something from me, I don't just let them walk away. Let me know what you would have done in this situation. This one is titled, Am I the a-hole for refusing someone to see me? I, 30 female, am 30 weeks pregnant with mine and my soon-to-be ex-husband's 31 male daughter. She will be my first kid, but it turns out that she won't be his first child. He's been carrying on an affair that started several years ago during my residency in internal medicine and cardiology. His excuse was that I was working long hours and not emotionally available, so I drove him to it. I found out about the affair because the woman with their child came to our home 2 months ago demanding I release him from our financially abusive and loveless marriage. I guess you could say that I ambushed him because I called him and told him he needed to come home. When he did and he saw her, I knew based upon his reaction that he had been cheating. So I kicked him and all his stuff out of the house. In my book, I granted his wish. He has asked for another shot that we go to marriage counseling, but he has had years to come clean and didn't, so I'm unwilling to attempt reconciliation. He's been calling and leaving messages at home, my cell phone, as well as the hospital where I work, asking if he could be with me when I go into labor. I have told him in no uncertain terms that he will not be allowed in or anywhere near my birthing room. I want people in there that I trust, and he is not one of them. He's been guilt-tripping me through saying that he has a right to see his child be born. That his screw-up is separate from our daughter, and it is, but I don't want the added stress of him being present. His family and he all think that I'm the a-hole and already alienating him from his child. My family and most friends support me, however, there are a few who think I'm being an a-hole here. Maybe I am because of the hurt that he has caused me. And yeah, Ripe Stars, honestly, if you think that OP is the a-hole in this situation after getting cheated on while being pregnant, then I don't even know what to tell you. Honestly, this guy has no right to anything. In this situation, honestly, OP is the victim and she can decide what happens here. I have no respect for that guy whatsoever. Either way, let me know what you think about this in the comments. People on Reddit said, he does not get to play the poor me victim card after carrying on a secret affair and having kids elsewhere. Your comfort and security come before his, period. The added stress is not healthy for the baby or you, especially during labor. This is not a revenge issue, this is a security and safety issue. You at your most vulnerable don't need to be near someone you just found out obliterated your trust. You deserve peace during such a critical health and emotional moment. Anyone that doesn't see that can get grey-rocked as to when you even go into labor. F them. After you give birth and feel okay, then they can be told that your LO is born, not the a-hole in any way, shape or form. His entitled self and family can wait until you're good and ready to be up to visitors. He gets no say. Comment number 2, not the a-hole. He has the right to be involved in the child's life, but there's no such thing as a right to witness their birth. Update edit: for those worrying about alimony, we have a prenup in place which by him cheating, he is in full violation of. He is therefore not entitled to any alimony. He is on his own a mechanical engineer, and though he doesn't make nearly as much as I do as a cardiologist, he can more than afford to take care of himself financially without my help. Edit: by the way, we don't live in the United States, for those wondering. I graduated secondary or high school at 16, completed university or college at 20, finished medical school at 24 and completed my residency at 28. And damn, this woman is busy. Props to her. Anyway, my country does not require doctors to enter fellowship programs. Edit: let me make this perfectly clear, as it has continuously come up. I will not under any circumstances keep him from having a relationship with his daughter. I'm completely agreeable to shared custody and to him seeing her after she has been born. And the next one is a malicious compliance neighbor story. I live in a mostly quiet neighborhood with lots of snowbirds and weekenders because of the proximity to a lake. The year-rounders are mostly retired and people generally get along fine. A couple years ago, neighbors on one side built a new garage and driveway, moving their cars much closer to my existing forsythia hedge. I love the forsythia in the spring and basically let it grow however it likes so I can have the bright yellow flowers. Almost immediately, they started complaining that the hedge blocked their view as they backed out of their driveway. In my state, neighbors have no right to a view extending over someone else's property, and our Supreme Court has repeatedly ruled that as long as trees and bushes don't actually impinge onto the roadway, property owners have no obligation to trim for visibility. I keep a 5-foot strip moat between my hedge and the road, perfectly reasonable to my way of thinking. Since they have no recourse, RE hatches, they instead complain to county code enforcement about anything else they can think of. My brother parked his licensed and insured project truck on my property a while back because he was in the process of moving and needed a spot for it while he was figuring things out. In the meantime, he was in a bad accident in another vehicle and the truck has been sitting for over a year now. The license plate recently expired and I got a letter from the county with threats of fines if it wasn't removed. So cue the malicious compliance. My brother decided to sell the truck for scrap and had it towed away this morning. This gave my neighbors their temporary victory as they observed from their deck and nearly 6 inches of improved view from their driveway. At least until I moved in my second vehicle, a 1960s Lincoln, which is about 2 feet longer than the truck with current plates and insurance, into that place this afternoon. As a single person with more than one vehicle, I may get around to driving that old car at least once more before winter. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. Neighbors trespassed on my beach and had drug-fueled parties on my private property. I am a little worried from the title that some of you might be immediately running down to the comments to write about how I cannot possibly own a beach because it is public property and things like that. I just want to make it clear off the bat that it is not like my house has some ocean view and I consider the beach that is close to my house only for my use or something. The total opposite actually, where I bought a house that is near some woods and at the back is an area of sand that people here call the beach since there's no actual coastline that leads to a lake. Now, I also want to make a point that I don't think the lake is mine, but the part of the sand that is on my property technically is, and people tend to take advantage of that. Maybe if the only thing people were doing was quickly cutting through to get to the water, that would be fine. I get that it is in a weird spot and they might not want to go all the way around through dense trees. I don't like having to trek either, so for that I at least understood, but the majority of people did not do that. They would set up their things right on my property, and at first I assumed they just did not know that anyone moved in or even owned it. Despite not really being a confrontational person, I started telling people, and to be honest, most people understood and just did not know where the line was. I live alone and in a new place, so I really did not feel comfortable with people on my property. The real issue though happened when a certain group of neighbors decided that they were going to use my property at night like they owned the entire lake and everywhere around it. Now, these were not the sit around a campfire, tell stories and drink a few beers type of parties. I know this because when the loud music and fire made me realize what was going on, I walked over to talk to them like I had everyone else. I would normally post a conversation, but that is too hard in this case because very little of what I was hearing was not just gibberish. These people were not drunk, no, they were on drugs. And I don't mean they were getting a little high, I mean like certain types of pipes and even needles kind of high. They were having a crazy drug party and it took me a good while to finally get them off my property. I did recognize one guy though as living a few houses away, meaning about a mile, and I decided that when he was sober I would go and speak to him. So the next day I went to his house and I swear 1 second after I knocked, the door was opened and he was staring at me like he was waiting. Neighbor, what do you want? Me, I just wanted to talk to you about last night. Neighbor, yeah, you totally kicked me off the beach when you had no right to. Me, actually that area is my private property and I don't want people there in general, especially people doing drugs and acting crazy. I guess this was the wrong thing to say because he just started yelling, how dare I accuse him of doing drugs and who do I think I am? Of course, mixed with a lot of cursing and truthfully disgusting insults I would rather not repeat even in the written form. A few days later, the party happened again and it was clear that neighbor was not going anywhere and I needed to figure out what I was going to do. There was no way I could let it keep going on, not only in the sense that I did not want them on my property, but I had a bad feeling that them doing drugs on my property could somehow end with me getting in trouble. I knew that I needed to be sneaky since speaking to them just was not working. I know that I might have been able to just call the police, but I had no proof, and where I live it would take hours for them to show up for something like drug use if they showed up at all. They did not even have a large department and there were bigger emergencies anyway. I thought about building a fence, but due to the shape and the lake, building a fence would have created a pretty unsafe area on the other side. I knew that I was going to have to get rid of them on my own, and clearly bluntly talking to them was not going to do it. My next step was that I got a camera with a really good zoom feature and I set it up and pointed it right near the spot they always seem to have a drug party at. Only a couple days later they showed up and started their usual routine. Making a fire that was used for not so good purposes, sit down and start drinking and doing drugs. Only this time everything was being recorded with the camera and they had no idea it was happening. There was also no doubting what they were doing because they did not even try to hide it a little bit. It was like they did not care because they thought there was never any way that they could possibly get caught. Well, the next morning I was able to download the footage and make many copies of it just in case. Now it was time for the second part of my plan, and honestly, the part that I was hoping would be the end. Since neighbors live far apart, we tend to always have each other's numbers even if we are not close, just in case of an emergency. Due to this fact, even though I am new in the area, I managed to get a few numbers, including neighbors. I did not really feel like having round 2 of getting yelled at on his porch, so this way I was able to draft a simple message. I sent him a little preview video that showed him very clearly doing drugs on my property. Then I sent him a message saying how if I ever saw him or any of his friends coming on my property again for any reason, drugs or otherwise, I would send the video to the police. While they cannot come unless it is an emergency, I could technically give it to them and then they would eventually get around to confronting the neighbor and all of his friends. I am a man of my word though, and I really was not going to do that if they never showed up on my property again. It might be weird to some of you, but I just did not want to be known as the guy that moved in and then got a bunch of people that they knew for years arrested. If he wanted to do those shenanigans in his own house, I really could not care less, but I just did not want it happening on my property in the middle of the night. Also, he did not ever actually respond to me, but I did notice that magically the party stopped, so I guess he was scared of what I might actually do if he continued. I get the occasional dirty look when I run into him, but we have not actually exchanged words since then, and I don't mind. As long as he stays off my property with his crazy beach drug parties, I don't really care if I know of his existence or not. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I would love to know if you would have been in OP's shoes in this story. Would you have reacted the same? Would you have also not sent the incriminating evidence, aka the videos, to the police? Please let us know in the comments. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.